Also very much for joining us today. We are talking shop. We're talking everything House of the Dragon season 2, small folks. All right, so we're gonna get straight into it. All right, so the beginning of the episode. Well, you know what? Let's do this. I like to start off by doing this. Give us your assessment of this particular episode. I want to start with Jeff first. What was this episode all about to you? What were some of those takeaways?
It was just another sort of bookend episode, like launching the story for this season to its final stages, right? I think it sets us up for two really big episodes, right? It was a long episode. It was probably the longest episode we've had so far this season. I could be wrong, but I believe it was, it was not because there is no filler in House of the Dragon. It wasn't filler. It was, but it was more of a bookend episode where they were really kind of just filling the gaps in of the story. Really, at this point with the show, right? At least on this episode, I felt like that's really what was going on. Was a lot of just filling in the gaps, and letting time move forward, sort of, if that makes sense, without giving too much, episode detail.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. So Jeff is from MCU's Bleeding Edge. All right. Next, we're going to go to Dom. Dom, what were your thoughts about today's episode? Or last night's episode, rather?
Absolutely loved it. I loved every single minute of this episode. It's probably the best episode since episode 4, possibly the best of the season. Like Jeff was saying, I love how the episode progressed the story, but even more than that, I love how it's managing to continue to surprise us. It's continuing to wow us. Despite the fact that it is based on source material that is pretty widely known and well recorded, it still continues to wow us in terms of the story progression, how it continues to move forward, how it is continuing to show how the characters are ultimately driving all the actions, the advancements of each of the characters, and it's everything that we love from good TV and good storytelling, honestly. But most of all, it's what we love best from World of Ice and Fire.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dom. Dom is from Talking TV Podcast. Chad, your thoughts about the episode?
I'm pretty much going to echo what they've said already, so I'm not going to go too deep into it. But I did like the progression of the characters and how some of the characters were dealing with how their actions have led everyone to where they're at right now, and how some had. There's some more regret than others, and others are like trying to navigate the situation they find themselves in. So, I mean, we'll get into the details of it, but I did like that character progression. It probably is one of my favorite of the season so far. They kind of all blend together for me, so I can't tell you exactly which one, but I did enjoy this one.
All right, so let's get into it. All right, so the Lannisters' army greets the Golden Tooth and commands Aemond to accompany them with Vhagar. Aemond isn't too happy about that. Aemond wants an alliance with the Triarchy. The council is dubious of the attempt. Aemond sends Cole to Harrenhal with all haste. Alicent attempts to temper Aemond, but he dismisses her from the small council. This was a quote that I loved. Have the indignities of your childhood not yet sufficiently avenged? Jeff, what were your thoughts about that part?
I was astonished that he dismissed. I guess it should have been expected that the Dowager Queen was going to be dismissed, right? It was only a matter of time, but still, it was shocking just because she's been on that council for a hot minute, and she does have like a lot of things, like decent things to say when she does have a chance to talk. Like she makes her points and all that. She's been effective. So you wonder what are they going to do with her character? Now. Basically, I felt like Aemond was really flexing way too hard. Like it just really wasn't. It was too much. Like it was too much. Like a push almost. Like like trying to flex. And I can understand. Although we know how this conflict is going to eventually end, we've already seen them make changes from the books, right? Already. So you never know what they may do with certain things already. At this point. At that point, I felt like I really felt like creeped out when he walked up behind the chair of that one dude right off the bat. And like
Tylan Lannister.
yeah, the Lannister dude when he got up like all close to him and had his arms on him and everything and all that and everything. That was creepy, dude. Like I'd be creeped out as fuck if somebody like sat next to me like that or whatever, you know? So I was thinking like, fuck, like I was put myself in his shoes and I was like, man, that would be weird. So he was squirming and shit. But besides that, that's about it, Chief. Let's do it.
All right, Dom, your thoughts?
Oh man, I love everything going on in this entire show, but like I guess the thing that's impressed me the most about the season is its usage of the grains. And I mean, Aemond, we all know it was shown last episode, which I unfortunately was not able to make, but it was shown last episode. Aemond's been waiting for this his entire life. And when Alicent tells him, have the slates of your childhood not been sufficiently vanquished, it's like you can see it in his eyes. He is never ever going to let go of those slights. He's going to let the fact that he's missing an eye and Aegon's constant bullying of him and feeling lesser than everybody, he's going to let those drive him for the rest of his life. And it's driving him to make the decisions and choices that he's making right now as, you know, basically King Subbin. And you see obviously that later on once he goes to talk with Aemond. But another interesting thing, that exactly, have the indignities of your childhood not yet been sufficiently avenged. Great quote. Absolutely great quote. And I guess also the biggest thing that happens here is that he takes that out on Alicent, for whatever reason, whether it's a logistical reason or whether it's a more personal reason. It's unfortunately Alicent is once again finding herself to be the victim and subject of her son's crossfire. And despite all that she's attempted to contribute to the realm, she realizes that she's playing a boys' game. She'll never be taken as seriously in a boys' game. And even more than that, she's probably realizing, wow, was I on the right side of history? Will I be on the right side of history here? I also think it's very interesting how they made another change. Like I said, minor change for the books. This is Otto Hightower's idea in the book to make an alliance with the Triarchy in order to attempt to break the blockade rather than Aemond's. Also, once again, a little bit of a book insert knowledge there. Obviously, this will signal the beginning of the Battle of the Gullet, which proves to be one of the bloodiest and most brutal battles that happens in the entire history of the Dance of the Dragons.
Thank you, Dom. Chad, your thoughts?
I agree with what Don was saying, particularly about Aemond waiting his whole life to do this. Like while Aegon was doing his debauchery and everything, Aemond was sitting there plotting, this is what I would do when I was in charge. So when he got rid of his mom from the council, I think the main thing was he realizes that while she's been sitting there, even though it is a boys' game, she had the influence she does have is always to lead them away from conflict. And Aemond is like, nah, head first. We're going to head first in the battle, in the fighting. And that's what I want. That's how I'm going to rule. And I'm going to take out this one potential piece that can maybe mitigate some of the things that I want to do. And I do think there's a whole lot of pettiness that goes along with it. But I think that's like his main motivation.
Okay. All right. Let's move. All right. So Carlos, is ready to serve as hand. Sir Stefan Darkland was asked to be a dragon rider because of his bloodline. There are 3 possible dragons that can be used. Darkland rises to the occasion. All right, Dom, what were your thoughts about this?
Oh man. The sowing of the seeds. I know I've been hyping that up all season, really. And it's an event that I'm still looking forward to. And obviously, as we know, this was just the beginning. But man, that's the problem. When you try to ride a dragon and it doesn't like you, you get burned. And oh man, Sir Stefan Darkland learned that lesson the hard way. Now, I do appreciate that Rhaenyra, at the very least, was upfront. She's like, look, there is a very high risk that you will die. This is one of those situations where you get the highest of highs if you succeed and the absolute worst of the worst if you fail. And unfortunately, Sir Stefan Darkland learned that the hard way, And especially given that it may not have been such a good idea to start him off with such a young dragon like Seasmoke. Maybe an older, more experienced dragon like Vermithor or Silverwing would have had a better chance. But also, it's the fact of it's like Sir Stefan Darkland is like Targaryen removed from a Targaryen removed. It's like the bloodline does thin over time. So like this is already a risk to begin with, going with, again, people who don't necessarily have the direct Targaryen bloodline. But what's also interesting that I will point out, and this kind of ties into a couple of later scenes as well, obviously to once Vermithor and Silverwing are eventually claimed in the next couple of episodes, is that the dragons may have a bigger part in this selection process than we originally thought. We've pretty much only been led to believe that, the dragon eggs are placed with the Targaryen kids when they're young, so the kids literally grow up with the dragons, or they have the ability to collectively bond with, an older dragon, such as Helena, or what Aemond did with Dreamfire and Vhagar ultimately, and we see that later on. But either way, it's not an easy picture. Unfortunately, Sir Stefan Darkland, he's only the first one to go in this conflict, or so it is according to the books.
All right, so let's move. So Daemon hallucinates over a memory with Viserys when his claim to the throne was stripped from him, a painful memory for him. In anger, he accused the Lord of Harrenhal and threatens his life. He leaves and encounters Alice, who suggests the ghost of Harrenhal has visited him. She says he is not the player. He is not the player, but a piece on the board. He asks her for her counsel. With dealing with the Riverland. She tells him House Tully is the Lord Paramount because they are wise men. She tells him to wait 3 days. Chad, what were your thoughts there?
I knew you were going to come to me with this Harrenhal stuff because of everything. I don't vibe with Harrenhal the most, and it's the whole ghost stuff.
Big
and
surprise there.
See,
big surprise there.
It's like I get it. It's a spooky place, and spooky stuff happens, but like I don't know. For me, it's like, is he hallucinating? Is it really the ghost? Tell me something. You're not telling me nothing, and it kind of chaps my ass a little bit. So every time one of these little ghost interactions happens, I'm like, I get why you're doing it to Daemon. Daemon needs to be haunted by his ghost to like kind of get him. Well, you would think to get him where he should be with Rhaenyra, but I don't think that's what's going to happen. I don't know all the ins and outs of the books, but
it's what happened with Daenerys in season 2 of Game of Thrones. It's the Vision Quest in order to kind of affirm their destiny and purpose.
Oh, I did kind of forget about it. But that because it's like a quest, so it's like kind of straightforward. This is like I showed up at this place to like lay my claim, and the ghosts are like, no, we're gonna just mess with you until you go nuts or you go do something else, and we don't know what the something else is. Well, at least I don't. So that's kind of my beef with Harrenhal, but I get it. You got to mess with Daemon because otherwise he's sitting there doing nothing because they have nothing and are being a little I guess stubborn. We'll get to that later, I'm sure.
And Jeff,
Jermaine, let me just real quick just mention that it just shows you how kind of a weirdo Daemon is, that like he hasn't banged the witch yet. Like she offered that pussy from jump. She offered it from jump. Like, here you go. You want, what I'm saying? And like most dudes would I would hit it if I was him by now. You know what I mean? She's a witch freak and all this shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, just imagine the shit she can do. You know what I'm saying?
I love it.
So I'm like, there's something wrong with him. I don't know what's going on with him.
It's called he can only bang members of his family.
Ooh, yeah, she's too old for him.
Exactly.
Might be exactly what he needs. But Jeff, those were all your thoughts about that part.
One thing, the way that they shot that the scene with the dragon and the knight was really well executed, really good directing, really well shot. Just overall, just really high production, like really good production. I just wanted to point that out, and also. I'm really enjoying the actress that's playing the Witch of Harrenhal. She's pretty solid, man.
Alice, gotcha.
Yes.
Yes. I like that Alice actress. She's pretty dope.
Okay, Dom, your thoughts?
Daemon. Yeah, I still can't figure out if this is like my favorite arc of the series, whatnot, if for no other reason other than just how much everybody hates it, because I'm a contrarian by nature. So the storyline and the stuff that people hate, I typically love, and the stuff that people typically love, I typically hate. But in this instance, I kind of love that, like, Daemon, who's constantly hyped up as like this big action character, in order to quite literally remove him from the action based purely off of like their dumb emotional reasoning. But in Song of Ice and Fire, it works. It's like he's literally just fled to this castle in the middle of nowhere. And he is raising an army and he is doing well. but he's also just like being haunted every 5 seconds to the point where he literally can't function. And that's kind of funny. And even if it is an excuse to bring back some of the characters from the first season, like Patty Considine and Millie Alcock, the scenes are still well acted and they're really well done. And it does push and develop his character. Because you're right, there kind of was no other way to push Daemon to this level. And so I really kind of do appreciate that we're seeing that. And I do love that it's like he's so dumb that he hasn't realized that Alice Rivers is completely behind this. Like, that's just funny to me, ultimately.
I think Jermaine might be onto something, Dom. Maybe he just needs some good pussy.
I mean, that's clearly what it is, but that's always been his problem. If you remember back at the first season when he was trying to bang Mysaria, and we all saw how that went, that didn't work out so well, Now, obviously, as what's shown later on in the episode, that there may be another reason as to why that was, but yeah. At the end of the day, Daemon literally, like, come on, Daemon was literally dreaming about banging his own mom like 2 episodes ago. Like,
yeah,
not even.
Okay. There's no great segue here. So back at Dragonstone, Darkland attempts to mount Seasmoke, but his fate ended there. This was supposed to be like a one-person type thing, but it's back to Chad and also Jeff kind of sort of talked about it. So I'm gonna go Chad, Jeff, and then move from there. Chad, your thoughts?
So this is when he got roasted, right?
Correct.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, we knew this is where this was going. Like, there was no way he was getting on this damn dragon. I did find him particular, like, there was a little bit of hubris because, he's saying he's doing it for his duty, but like in the middle where it looks like the dragon might actually do it, he's like, oh, I can do this. And as he referred to dragons as, they think of them as the guys, he's like, oh, I'm going to be up there with the guys. You could see it in him for a minute. And right when he did that is right when the dragon is like, nah, bro, I'll let you get just close enough. And that you and one of the handlers got crispy too, right?
Yeah. But the handler was smart enough to at least slit his own throat.
Yeah, I did see that. He was like,
Markman, not so much.
Yeah. So while it was always doomed to fail, there's always a touch of hubris that they got to show you. Like, when you try to fly a little bit too close to the sun, you literally get burnt.
Well,
Jeff?
They built some suspense off that shit. Like, you want to talk about a suspenseful scene? That was like seriously suspenseful. Like there was. I mean, it was nice to see. Like to have that kind of suspense like that. That's one thing the dragons do, is they add that component, right? Where when you throw them in the mix, they can affect that kind of energy on screen, right? Where you have that tension almost, because they're like so fucking like destructive, right? And like so wild and shit and whatnot. And they do a great job of not overusing them, right? In the episodes, like you don't see them a lot. So when you do see them, they look very distinct, to you. You know what I mean? Like, you don't see them constantly. It's not like an episode thing, where there's tons of dragon shots. So I like the usage of them, how they go about doing it. It's well done. It's not never overdone. And I think that's done purposefully, probably, if anything, right? Because they could just do more dragons if they wanted to. I think it makes more sense to it adds more to them when you only get them sporadically almost. That builds up there's just an anticipation because you're going to get them eventually, right, in the audience. So just really great scene, really fun to watch.
Dom, this goes only to you. So Carlos meets Alan and was asked to be his first mate. I mean, Alan was asked to be Carlos's first mate. What are your thoughts about that?
I mean, this scene, there's not a whole lot to it because it's kind of just a warm up for what happens with Addam and Seasmoke later. But I like that they're continuing to build up Alan as just as important of a character as Addam. Addam obviously is going to naturally get more attention by virtue of the fact that he's younger, cooler, and ends up becoming a dragon rider by the end of this episode. But Alan poses just as important a question because obviously when Corlys legitimizes both of them, they both ultimately become Valerians by nature, and they kind of do take Corlys's place as being his new heir, with Rhaenyra and Baela otherwise kind of occupied, So I do appreciate that that Alan is getting as much screen time, and I do wonder about why Alan is so conflicted, whereas Addam is like, yeah, you should absolutely take the offer because it could be one step closer to legitimization. Alan still seems to be skeptical of it, and I'm not quite sure why that is, especially now that especially now with Rhaenys being dead, Corlys, if there was ever a time when Corlys needed to secure his house, it would be now, So just from a tactical decision, I'm kind of a little bit confused as to why Alan is still refusing kind of the opportunity to get closer to Corlys, as is shown.
Maybe he just doesn't want to get his hopes up. As a little kid, your dad never comes around, so
Yeah.
All right. So let's move. All right. So a patron is given fish when he orders other food, and that leads to a discussion of the feasts had at the Red Keep, while every one of the small folk is limited to what they eat. This becomes quite significant a little later on, and I wanted to talk about that. So I believe that starts with Chad first.
Yeah. So to me, this just shows the lack of experience that they have in the Red Keep with the people on the council, to not know that the town folks is going to get tired of not having food. And what they say when they're talking amongst themselves, that even when Viserys was there, if they didn't have anything, he wouldn't have the lavish feast. So it at least makes them feel like, they're not being taken advantage of. With these clowns, they're just up there partying it up, rubbing it in people's faces, and just don't think anything's going to happen. So when what happens at the end of the episode happens, they could have, anybody else with more experience would have seen this coming. So I think it's a good way to get have the place feel more lived in, but also to show the inexperience of the people running, and why maybe those are the people that should not be in charge.
Jeff?
I don't have a lot to say on this one, really. Besides the fact that I like that. I like this turn towards making more of a center, into the smaller folk. I like that direction. I like seeing things from their perspective in the episodes and things like that and whatnot. It's nice. It adds a little a different element to the show that wasn't there in season one, really. So it's nice. It's a different touch we've had in this season, actually having that element there. I'll talk more on this later on in the show.
No.
Yeah, so obviously the beginning of the small folk arc in this. The thing that I love both about this season of the show and the show in general is its bigger emphasis on the small folk, because I mentioned this on my show last night. Despite the fact that the small folk were still shown as being affected by the wars that occurred in Game of Thrones, we never really got to spend as much time with them as characters, really. And that's something that we actually get in this show, and I love it. I love it so much. Obviously, you're seeing it primarily through the viewpoint of the two dragon seeds that we've been following throughout these last couple episodes, Hugh and Ulf in this season, obviously, who, as we know, are going to be the ones to tame Vermithor and Silverwing. But the thing that I love about their setup here is showing, again, the disparity between rich and poor, and how, obviously we see Jacaerys in the preview for next week's episode talking about, if we start just letting anybody tame the dragons, we kind of lose our credibility as Targaryens ultimately. And I think that creates a really interesting divide and subtle arc that's been being set up by this whole arc, which is that, like, the commoners finally rising up and being able to grasp the power of the royals, especially given that in this episode we see the wealth disparity and how and the war efforts and how it's affecting the commoners so badly ultimately, where you have people literally rioting because they don't have enough to eat. And you see Hugh is the one that's being really badly affected by that, as he's still got a family to feed ultimately. So it's becoming very easy for Mysaria's agents to spread and sow discord and chaos amongst the Greens.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. All right. So next, Rhaenyra is followed by one of our council members, and she strikes him. "It is my fault, I fear. You have forgotten to fear me." White Worm attempts to console Rhaenyra as she licks her wounds. White Worm tells her the small folk.
I was about to say, where was that one going, Jermaine? Where was that one going?
Oh,
man.
White Worm tells her the small folk
didn't realize we were there yet.
are ready to burn. White Worm also tells her that the stance she's taking and holding the sword and all of that becomes her. All right, so I'm gonna skip Chad. Chad was gonna get this, I feel like, 3 times in a row. So I'm gonna go to Jeff. Jeff, what are your thoughts about that part?
I like for the most part, I appreciate the Mysteria scenes, her character, the dynamic that adds. I like seeing the inner workings of the show. Like some of the scenes we're talking about are are more of like the sort of outlying scenes of the episode, and I enjoy these parts, these aspects of the episode. And I do like I like seeing Emma Darcy play Rhaenyra and how well she conveys the emotions of her character, sort of like stir crazy in that castle, almost, like wanting to do more, right? Understanding that that she's lacking in military experience, to the point where she's holding swords and shit like that, and then you see her put it down, right? Because she obviously realized that she looks stupid. She has no feel for a sword. She's never been taught how to use one. So it's all very interesting. It's a really great episode.
Okay, down.
Yeah, Rhaenyra is not having a good season. She really isn't. Every single thing that she's been trying to do so far has failed. First, blood and cheese. Then the twins, obviously, that was out of her control. That was more so Aegon fucking up. Then, so far, her only smart decision has been to send her sons and Rhaena away because she knows that the chances of them dying are much greater if she stays there. And now this is the latest blunder on her part. And obviously she has to maintain a certain degree of respect amongst her lords and sir, and Lord Celtigar is speaking way out of line, honestly. But given the recent track record, I'm sorry, Rhaenyra has not been doing a good job as leader of the Blacks this season. And ultimately, unfortunately, as problematic as Daemon is, he has kind of been right about everything. Everything that Daemon has suggested, from Rhaenys's screw up all the way at the end of season 1 to now, all of Daemon's suggestions have kind of been correct. That if they followed his advice, they probably could have won a lot quicker. Vhagar always would have been a problem, but at the very least, I think they could have won the war a lot faster. And obviously, with following Rhaenyra, it's what's going to lead to a lot of the problems that come later on. Even though she gets some small victories in the latter run, her experience this season has shown that she doesn't quite know what she's doing. So obviously, kind of the fact that she only gets consolation from Mysaria, given the fact that Mysaria is the one that's finally starting to help Rhaenyra in ways that she wouldn't have expected ultimately. But yeah, I'm sorry, but Lord Celtigar, I kind of understand where he's coming from, Even though he's a white man and I'm supposed to hate him.
You don't have to hate white men. Chad, your thoughts?
I mean, how am I supposed to follow down on that? I tell you what, I won't. He's pretty much summed it all up. I mean, I have more sympathy for Rhaenyra than that a little bit, but I mean, he is right. She is built to rule a kingdom that's in peace. Winning a war is not something that she's ever taught to do or thought she would have to do, and she is messing up. But if she was just sitting there in the castle, everything would be fine if she was on the throne. But for her to get the throne, she's just messing everything up on the way.
Okay. All right.
The screw ups have not solely been on Aegon this season, And obviously, again, she is grieving considering the fact that she's lost a son and now, obviously, an aunt. But yeah, still.
Well, Daemon needs to come correct in the Riverlands, bro. You know what I'm saying? For real.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So let's move. All right. So Clubfoot tells Aemond what is happening with the small folk. He hints at serving as the hand. Aemond rebuffs his attempt and asks Clubfoot to get Otto Hightower. I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was doing that. Aegon's strength is returning, but he's in great pain. Aemond visits him, and Aegon is afraid and says he remembers nothing. Aemond pins Aegon down with his weight. Aegon, might have been saved by the Maester. All right, so I believe it is. I believe it's Jeff, right? Jeff, your go.
Oh. Okay. I forgot the first part of what you said, but the second part, it's seeing Daemon with with Aemond with Aemon. It was like in the episode, it was hard for me to tell that he was really putting that much pressure on him or anything like that. But it was obvious that he was.
He probably wasn't the funniest part because he was probably just putting just enough for him to feel it because of how bad those burns are.
Yeah, he was. There wasn't a lot of effort being made there, but it was obviously discomforting for Aegon. And you could see why he'd be afraid in his position. He's defenseless. You know what I'm saying? But besides that, I really didn't have anything else.
Dom?
All right. Oh man, I love these scenes. Really, I mean, Larys Strong is low key like the best character on the show.
I'm sorry. One more thing, Dom. Bring back Otto Hightower. Fuck yeah, baby. Bring back Otto.
Smart decision. But as far as, oh my God, I love Larys Strong so much because he's so slimy and manipulative. And unlike Varys, this is the biggest difference between him and Varys, right? Varys was a dude who always had the upper hand and just knew exactly what he was doing. Larys Strong is somebody who feels like he is trying so hard to gain attention. And he got a little bit of foot and he thinks that put him in a position of power. And unfortunately, he is quickly realizing that's not the case at all because Alicent's sons do not play the way that Alicent does. And I just love the fact that unlike Aegon, who is more easily manipulated, Aemond is seeing right through his bullshit. And he's being like, oh, you're right. I do need probably a more competent hand. Thank you, Larys Strong, for your suggestion. Now bring my grandfather back. He was the only one that actually knew what he was fucking doing in this pack of fools. And he's the only one that could probably get us back on track. That scene made me laugh, honestly. And the Aegon scene, I mean, oh man. Obviously, Aemond is a little pissed and he wants to kill him, but also there's a part of him that's delighting in this. He's taking his sweet time. He finally has his brother in the position that he feels like he's been in his brother's eyes his entire life. And it's kind of being like, yeah, this is what happens when you mess with me, honestly. And Aegon finally understands what his brother's capable of. And even if and when he heals fully, he's going to be terrified of Aemond and living in Aemond's shadow for the rest of his life, honestly. Aemond, this was him asserting his dominance right here. And sure, the Maester probably saved him when he walked in, but at the same time, Aemond was like, yeah, I accomplished what I needed to do, regardless.
Chad.
Still recovering from the getting some foot.
Look, that was a line. As I try to avoid describing him as Clubfoot, it keeps scrolling across the screen, and you to just go straight Littlefoot. Bravo, sir. Aemond is asserting dominance over Aegon. I do think he delighted in that because I forgot that he bullied him. So they bullied Aemond so much when they were growing up. So all of that built up, he can just delight in knowing that his life's in his hands. He could do whatever he wanted. He almost killed him before, and now if he wanted to, he could do it now. And Aegon actually realizing that. I do think because Aemond is so cunning that a part of him, as long as Aegon's alive, he will kind of wonder if he'll tell someone, and then his life's in peril because you tried to kill the king. The king said, off with his head or whatever. So I do think the threat is enough for Aegon to not do that now, but I do think Aemond is smart and cunning enough to think that. That's probably not going to last forever, and that he might have to do other things. But he's too busy worried about ruling right now, and Aegon's not really a threat, so he doesn't have to do anything at the moment.
Thank you, sir. All right, so Rhaenyra discovers there's a dragon in the Vale. The Lady of the Vale tries to dismiss Rhaenyra. Dom, this is a quick one just for you.
Oh, man, I love how you knew to come to me with all the dragon lore. Oh, I'm about to go hard on this one. So just to be a little, nerdy here for a second. So as we know, we've been introduced to 3 dragon seeds so far. Addam Velaryon, who we see as claimed Seasmoke in this episode. Hugh Hammer, the blacksmith's bastard, who has been seen trying to take care of his family. He claims Vermithor. And Ulf the White, the guy who just gets drunk in the bar and complains. He claims Silverwing, right? There is a 4th dragon seed that pops up in the book, and there were a lot of rumors behind the scenes as to whether or not they were going to creatively include the character of Nettles. There were rumors about 2, both her and Darren Targaryen, the fourth son of Alicent and Viserys, who has now been talked up a couple times in this episode. But there was a question as to whether Nettles was going to come in, because Nettles is one of those characters that pulls off the impossible in the book in terms of she is the only one to tame a wild dragon. Seasmoke, Vermithor, and Silverwing were all previously claimed by Targaryens who had passed on or left. But Sheepstealer, who is the dragon in question here, is a wild dragon, which means that dragon has never been claimed by anybody. So there was a rumor circling way back before the season started that they were going to swap out Nettles, who was a character that kind of would have been inserted just last minute, after all the deliberate work they've done to build up Hugh, Ulf, and Addam. And now it is basically all but confirmed that they're going to have Rhaenyra instead, who they've talked about previously as having never been able to tame a wild dragon before. Rhaenyra is going to be the one to tame Sheepstealer. She will be the fourth dragon seed, which also begs the question as to whether Baela will end up taking a larger part in the war, because in the war, once it starts, it's really the four main dragon seeds, obviously. But obviously we saw that Baela is riding Moondancer, so she could play a bigger part as well, especially once the Blacks do eventually take King's Landing, and especially after the Battle of the Gullet. Which, oh man, you thought Rook's Rest was something? You ain't seen nothing yet.
All right, this next question is for Chad and Jeff in that order. All right, so Addam and Alan argue over what Alan could ask for by saving Corlys's life. Alan tells him to stop wishing for Corlys to claim them. So yes, Chad, what were your thoughts about that?
I think it's kind of touched on earlier, like why is Alan so hesitant to reconnect with his dad, even though officially he's not trying to reconnect now, but he keeps trying to advance him in these positions. He saves his life, and then Corlys is he keeps trying to talk to him, advance him in the service. And
hold on, let me ask it in a different way. What is it that we learn about the personalities of these two brothers? The difference between Addam and Alan. Addam is the younger one. Yeah, the younger one.
I think we already saw it, because he was, when we first meet the younger one, he's like, well, why didn't you he's talking to you, you saved his life, he realizes it's you, why aren't you pressing him on stuff? And the older one is like, nah, I'm done. But I think actually the biggest thing that reflects on the older one for me in this one is when we first see him, he's wearing a turban thing on his head, and then when he's talking to his brother, he's shaving his head, and you see that he has the white stubble on his head, where his brother just has the straight black hair. Where we know the positions were flipped, the brother would keep the hair because he, even though he's a bastard, he's going to flaunt the fact that he is Corlys' son. Whereas the oldest one is like, I don't want anything to do with that, so I'm going to get rid of the only visible claim I have to him. And so that little part showed a lot to me about who, Alan. Particularly the oldest one, Alan. What Alan is, he does not want, as of right now, he does not want any parts of this. Where his brother is all gung ho to get with it. So maybe it's their age difference, how they brought up with him being older and whatnot, but he just does not want anything to do with it. And I think he would just rather just work on the ships and not have to deal with his dad at all.
Jeff, when you think about a dragon rider and you think about Addam, what comes to mind?
Oh, I don't know, Jermaine. That's a tough question because I don't know what you need, what physically you need to have going on to to ride a dragon. I guess it boils down
physical as more so as it is mental and just fortitude.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that. I mean, he's a seaman. They're hardworking and all that. I would think that he would acclimate well, and obviously we'll see how he does. I would think he would acclimate well to the whole dragon deal.
Yeah. If I could just jump here real quick, Jermaine, I think the biggest difference between the two, honestly, is not only just the age, but the personality in terms of you kind of see this a lot in sibling dynamics with the older one who's usually more reserved and usually a little bit more cautious versus the younger one who's obviously a little bit more of a daredevil, a little bit more of a go-getter. But what's interesting, too, is that Addam's not necessarily a go-getter. Addam's more of a free spirit, which I think is interesting. I love the dynamic between these two because it's so different than any other dynamic really on the show, where everybody up until this point that we've kind of been introduced to is like either a really, really highborn or like kind of a lower born who's just struggling to survive. And Addam and Alan are kind of both right in the middle. They're not like really high up with the action, but they're both like kind of working class. You know, Addam obviously with his fishing and Alan obviously serving on Corlys's ships, obviously. And obviously, again, the big difference, too, being Alan wants nothing to do with his Valyrian heritage versus Addam is obviously a little bit more receptive towards it. I think that's a really important distinction when it comes to the reason why the one of them rides a dragon and eventually, unfortunately, rides off to his death, while the other one ends up becoming the heir to the Valyrian household and ultimately one of Aegon III's hands once he eventually rises to the throne. So...
Oh,
sorry.
I didn't know you were done.
I realize my cutoffs are not exactly like as book pointed as they probably should be, but
Okay. All right. So let's move. So Jace tells his mother he respects her act of attempting with Darkland. Rhaenyra wants to move in action. Jace wants Daemon's help. Rhaenyra hates to hear Daemon's name. The White Worm and Rhaenyra's trap has been laid. They sent food by boats to the small folk. Alicent visits Aegon, curious of his condition. The Maester also tells her there has been no word from Lord Otto Hightower. Remember, she was trying to get in touch with him herself. Alicent goes to give her brother Gwaine her blessing. We learn Gwaine's relationship with his father Otto has been strained. Alicent attempts to connect with Gwaine, but he pushes her away. However, on the subject of Alicent's youngest son, they do connect over his kindness. She acknowledges her shortcomings as a mother. Alicent visits her daughter, wanting to light a candle for Aegon. All right, so that's a little bit more than we've had thus far. I believe it's Jeff. Jeff, what were your thoughts about all of that?
I thought it was kind of just, you know, part of the episode that was sort of, if I will say, kind of fillerish. That was just kind of in there, you know, like it didn't really lead to anything all that you know, that crazy at that point, other than the gifted of food, you know, part. That was pretty neat. It was really well done too. It was a really nice touch. Having, you know, like the boats just come in the way they did, and just having the people like they're fishing, because, you know, all they eat is fish or whatever, and having the boats just pop up like that. That was a really good move from Mysaria. Like, that was a really good, you know, smart, you know, good counseling from her. With, you know, and Rhaenyra, you know, Rhaenyra taking her advice and doing all that, setting that up. That was a good move. Her PR is going to be a really important to her, I think. You know, with King's Landing and all that, with what's going on with the small folk over there. So, yeah, that's pretty much it, I would say. Other than, again, I love Alicent's. I love her character, but this is sort of just other than later on in the episode when there's the riot and all that. Some of her scenes were less than, like, you know, you know, like impactful. They were sort of benign.
Fair. Dom?
Yeah, a lot to break down here. First things first, Jason Rhaenyra, obviously he's there to try and comfort her after the failed attempt, and she's kind of realizing, like, yeah, at the end of the day, my son, who I love and value, is still a man, and he's going to have a man's view ultimately. And I think that's kind of what's apparent, because even though, despite the fact that Jace hates Daemon as much as Rhaenyra does, unfortunately, he is still kind of highlighted the tactical obvious, which is that as many dragon riders as they possibly can get, they still cannot make a move without him. But as you said, Mysaria, who's proven to be Rhaenyra's most valuable ally this season, reveals obviously that they have succeeded in sending food to King's Landing, once again sowing dissent, you know, causing a lot more chaos, you know, as they are starving, struggling for survival. And once again, along with the food comes the message: this is from Queen Rhaenyra. She is looking out for you in a way that the Greens are not. And the other also detail that we forgot to mention before is all the starving small folk end up seeing the sheep herded into the city in order to feed the dragons, obviously once again emphasizing the war effort over the livelihood of the small folk. The Alicent scenes here, I love these scenes. But the only other character, so my favorite character low-key is Larys Strong. My favorite sequence and arc this season might be Alicent's, because it's just a complete downward spiral. You know, she made a choice ultimately that she thought was the right one, even though she wasn't fully confident in it at the end of the first season, and it has been doing nothing but causing her suffering. From the death of her grandchildren to just being dismissed and overlooked at every turn, to her lover spurning her, to basically the revelation that she made the wrong choice. And now this is just the final nail in the coffin. But, you know, her conversation with Gawain, it's meant to be touching, and it is. It's very, very touching. It's a nice moment between siblings when they both kind of realize that they've both kind of fallen out of favor with their father ultimately, as, you know, through Otto's silence with both of them. It's going to be really interesting to see once he finally makes his grand return to King's Landing. But the biggest thing as far as the conversation about Daron, the final son, who we still have not seen this season, but is being hinted at as far as will play a very important part later on in the war, you know, once the war reaches the Reach. It's meant to emphasize that, yeah, Alicent sucks as a mom, because she basically kind of straight up says, yeah, so, but Gawain tells her, yeah, he has a kindness that his brothers don't, and Alicent's like, might that be because they weren't raised at court by me, ultimately? You know, the fact that Daron was raised in a much more peaceful environment, like Highgarden probably was able to learn in a much less stressful environment, not as much competition. He was able to probably grow up untethered, really, which is kind of, in a way, a blessing. But also, again, what does that say about Alicent ultimately? You know, because it wasn't exactly her call as far as to send her youngest son away. You can almost guarantee that was Otto's, along with every other decision that's been made in her life. So that's kind of what that conversation told me, per se.
Chad,
I'll keep it quick because what stood out to me was that part about the youngest son, and that he's actually kind. And Don pretty much summed it up. Alicent sucks as a mom. All her kids are awful. All of this is going on because of her awful ass kids. And yeah, I didn't think of it like that, but yeah, it is kind of a thumb and eye that the young one that she had nothing to do with is actually, from this conversation, is going to turn out to be the best and most and kindest of all the three, whereas these other ones are just wrecking shop and causing all kind of suffering. I didn't think of it as like a tragic irony, but it kind of is.
Oh, it 100% is. It 100% is.
all right, let's switch the order just a little bit. All right, so the small folk run through the streets with Rhaenyra's food, and it causes pandemonium. While out lighting candles, the small folk throw fish at Alicent while calling her Queen of the Fishes. Chaos follows. Alicent, y'all, I can't see. Alicent's arm was cut. Clubfoot tells the maiden not to give Aegon the drink because it dulls his mind, and it's all he has left. Sorry about that. He compared his clubfoot to Aemond's injury. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm going to always say clubfoot. He tells him people will underestimate him, but that is his advantage. His life is in danger by Aemond. Aegon asks Clubfoot for help. Dom.
Oh, man. Big scene. Big scene right here. And first of all, this is Matthew Needham's Emmy reel right here. He's like, listen, there's already a lot of people in the show that are going to be nominated. But he also understands that there may be some category shifts given how many new people are added and how many people are elevated to lead that were previously supporting last season. For example, Matt Smith will most surely be lead this season as opposed to supporting than he was for the first season. And Clubfoot Lara Strong, he sees, and from a character standpoint, he finally sees a connection, and in order to form a more personal bond, he understands that his position is weakening with the people who are currently in charge. You know, as Alicent's power slowly being stripped away, and Aemond does not see a use for him the way that the others did. So he has to make a bond with Aegon, and obviously he, sees a kinship with Aegon now, given the injuries that Aegon has suffered. Because it's like, yes, you are now kind of in the same position as I am. You are kind of debilitated beyond belief, but you can either, suffer as a result of it and be a victim your entire life, or you can use it to your advantage. And he kind of is able to kind of form a personal bond because, and this is ultimately going to benefit Aegon in favor, because later on when the Blacks take King's Landing, Aegon is not there, and it is solely based on the effort of Lara Strong having smuggled him out of the city. So again, this scene is a crucially important scene that's disguised as an Emmy reel. But yeah, phenomenal performance by Matthew Needham, the actor who plays Lara Strong.
Chad.
For me, I'm not the biggest fan of Alicent as a person in this show. So the riot that she's caught in is kind of like, it's a bit of comeuppance for her. I was really amused by her getting pelted by the fish and called Queen of the Fishes. I was quite amused by that, but it was the ride was what it should have been. Like it's the small folks uh, trying to realizing that Rhaenyra is there to help them, and how quickly they just turned on the Greens that were just out in the city, like nothing. Half of them haven't even gotten the food; they just know that it's there, and but they take the opportunity because it's really a moment of weakness. It's showing that your enemy is able to give me something that you're not, and they take that opportunity to take it out on the queen. I don't know how Aemond is going to feel about that later on, but it was nice to see them, get a measure of to have some actual action in what is going on. Because as small folks, they pretty much just sit there and they take what these royals give them. But in this instance, they were able to give it back just a little bit.
I love how they go out of their way to be like, oh, Aemond would never burn down his own city. Wink, wink, wink. Definitely not referencing how we failed with that miserably in Game of Thrones.
Jeff?
I missed that part, yeah.
Well, these guys have already pretty much talked about everything, but I actually feel bad for Aegon. I do. I feel bad for him. It's hard not to. There's a part of him, like the character that makes you want to kind of like root for him a little bit, almost. I don't know how to explain it. You don't want to like
especially in that scene.
Yeah. So. It'll be interesting to see if maybe there's an attempt to like move him out of where he's at right now to like somewhere else, right? Like transport him somewhere different where he feels more secure or something like that, right? That's all I had.
All right. Let's move. All right. So, in another memory, Damon recalls the death of Viserys' wife. This time, he consoles his brother, Lord Grover is dead. Lord Tully is now in charge. Alice applied her skills. Yes. Addam sees Seasmoke overhead. Seasmoke seems to be chasing him. Seasmoke slowly approaches Addam. I believe, I don't remember. Is this Chad? Chad.
This sounds about right. So I'll leave all the other stuff to everybody else. I'll just quickly talk about the dragon. I know we're getting so I knew we were getting other dragon riders going into this. I don't know all of the lore. I just thought since we had seen more of Alan, I thought it was him. So when it showed up for his brother, I was like, okay, he would be more eager to take a part of this, which I think kind of shows in the fact that even though we don't see him riding in this episode, he does ride, and he's riding around where people can see him, and that's how Rhaenyra finds out about it. So it was just interesting to me to see who was the first one to come up with a dragon after that. And I'm not touching any of the Harrenhal stuff because we know.
Jeff?
The Harrenhal scene was good. I liked it. I thought it was redeeming for Daemon. I like Daemon's character. I want to see him like come back strong and close out the season on a high note. I'd like to see him like kind of like walk away from his Harrenhal experience kind of redeemed a little bit. But we'll see. And then, yeah, the dragon scene at the end is great. Really entertaining. Very suspenseful again. Really well shot and just really, awesome. I really enjoyed this episode. Definitely a 10 out of 10.
Okay. Dom, your thoughts?
Oh, man. My favorite scene of the episode, for sure. My favorite scene. First of all, just the hilarity that came from the dragon, like kind of.
Hold up, Dom. Hold up, man. You loved every part of this episode.
Fine, yes,
every part of this episode.
Like
Let's just say this.
Fucking show. Almost like I love this fucking show. But of all my other favorite scenes, I've liked individual characters. I've liked individual arcs. I've liked individual sequences. But as far as moments in the episode, the Addam Seasmoke claim scene is my favorite. Because to me, what this was a reverse Pokemon hunt. Is what it was. Where basically like Seasmoke is flying around, he's fucking with him a little. I like it because the thing that I love is how much character they give these dragons. And differentiate that Seasmoke, as opposed to a lot of the other dragons on the show, is a younger dragon. Like of all the bigger sized dragons, other than Vermax, I'm pretty sure Seasmoke is the youngest dragon. So like the fact that like he's the one that we kind of spend the most amount of time with this season, I just love that. And the other thing too, also as far as the subliminal messaging, and I was actually talking to my roommate about this as well, is the fact that, so obviously the big thing that everyone's been making a stink about is, oh, how can Seasmoke bond with another rider if Rhaenyra supposedly is still alive? Because we know Rhaenyra did not die, as in the source material, he fled to Essos. Some people have rumored that, oh, he died off screen. Other people, see, my thought process is, I don't necessarily know if it matters whether Rhaenyra died or not. I think it's two things. One, the fact that he's been away for at least almost a decade at this point. It's been like 7-8 years since he first left. So it's been long enough that Seasmoke has been without a rider. And at this point, Seasmoke is like, he's younger. He's used to having like a boy to like chill with, you know, and he misses that dearly. The second thing being obviously that Addam may as well be the spitting image of Rhaenyra, the only difference being the hair color. So it's not just the mix of Valyrian and Targaryen, well, not Targaryen, but Valyrian blood, but also the fact that he's literally a spitting image of his former rider. So I like that he's almost like kind of messing around with him after the whole, like, you know, he's already got like the obey chanting magic from the Targaryen mages on his mind. So he's kind of already in that mode. So he's like, all right, I like this guy. I'm just going to go claim this guy. And the sequence plays out like kind of suspensefully, but for me, it's like pure comedy. You know, one of those things where it's like, because I already know, I'm like, this is adorable. This is hilarious. I'm waiting for him to like start nuzzling him and for him to start cuddling, you know, like Sunfire was doing a couple episodes ago, or for this to turn into How to Train Your Dragon. That's what I was expecting here, you know. But it was great. And then I also love how in the next week's trailer, you see Addam standing in front of Rhaenyra when she kind of goes to interrogate him, and she's like, "What? How does he have another rider? Like, what happened here?" And Addam just looks like spooked. He's like, I don't even know how to start here. He's like, I was just out here collecting clams. Now I'm here.
All right, final scene. So the White Worm tells Rhaenyra about their recent plans, but Rhaenyra was concerned about how Jace seems to be at odds with her. They also discuss Daemon and how he may have turned against her. The White Worm still tries to give her hope. White Worm tells her the story of how she got the scar around her neck. She tells her how steadfast Rhaenyra is. They embrace. Seasmoke has been spotted with a rider. Rhaenyra decides to see for herself. At this point, I don't remember who, but I'm going to start with Jeff.
Yeah, so really great ending for the episode. Really great ending. Great wrap up. We got some lesbian action. I told you I always knew that Rhaenyra was getting down with Alicent back in the day, you know, and like this just confirms it that she gets down like that, right? So there you go. Just Emma Darcy's really great in all her scenes, but I imagine this will probably really pep up Rhaenyra. You know, like I can't wait for the next episode so I can see her reaction when she goes out and sees that there's
Did you say pep her up?
Yeah, she's gonna be like totally. She's gonna be on cloud nine. It's gonna be dope.
Okay, is that it, Jeff?
Yeah, that's it.
Dom.
Oh man, the scene that we knew that the showrunners knew was gonna break the internet. Honestly, like they knew. They're like, okay, House of the Dragon, it's been set up pretty much up until this point, but here it's like, okay, this is our chance. We're finally gonna drop a bomb in there, and boy, they did. And I don't know. I guess obviously, Jeff, you're right. Like she obviously clearly. Obviously, it was hinted at, and now it's basically been confirmed that she was getting down with Alicent back in the day. But I don't know, man. Just a little bit more setup, I guess, is all I'm asking for here. Just a little bit more setup. The way that it's framed as a shock moment, gotcha moment, and it's like, I don't know.
There was a scene earlier. I just can't remember the exact scene. There was a scene earlier where it was kind of like it was a touching moment, and they could have gone there. And it for me, it put it in my mind. I was like, hold up, wait a minute, what's about to happen? It didn't happen, and then boom, the end of this episode.
I guess I just don't necessarily trust Mysaria enough yet to really believe that, like, oh, she's falling for her. And, in my mind, she's still manipulating Rhaenyra, honestly. And Rhaenyra's obviously in a very vulnerable position given that everything that's been happening to her recently. So, but the good thing is that, of course, as soon as she hears that someone claims Seasmoke, she immediately snaps to it and is like, okay, we're off. And as far as Jace goes, like, yeah, of course Jace is going to be jealous because he obviously clearly suspects Mysaria and doesn't trust her and is very worried about her having this close influence over his mom, ultimately. So, yeah, it was an interesting scene to end the episode. I'm interested to see where it's going to go going forward, especially given Daemon's history with Mysaria, and especially since this could kind of flip and continue to add more fuel to the fire that will be the crumbling relationship between Rhaenyra and Daemon. So, yeah, it's a gotcha moment that definitely does progress the story forward in an interesting way that I did not see coming.
Chad.
Yeah, so y'all pretty much covered it all. I wasn't surprised to see that it happened, but I am very skeptical of Masaria because she is, while she's acting more trusting to Rhaenyra, she's always, it seems like she's always going to act in her best interest. So how long does that last? But I do think it has the potential to bring the conflict between Rhaenyra and Daemon, with her in the mix. So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing how that goes.
Okay. All right. Jeff, 1 to 10. How would you rate this episode?
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10, baby. What makes it a 10?
Oh, just a really, really watchable episode. Just really watchable, really enjoyable, really had me glued. So it just, like that's all you need to be a 10.
True.
Just like I like my TV episodes, like I like my women. I want that to be engaging. Yeah, I give this episode a 9.5. It's not a perfect episode. I had a couple of micro problems with it, but for the most part, yeah, it's a great episode. It's probably the best episode since Rook's Rest, and it really sets up a baller final 2 episodes that we're gonna get in the next 2 weeks. So yeah, 9.5 for me.
And what were those micros?
Really, again, just the shock moment at the end and a couple of what's it called? Yeah, really, that's it. Just the shock moment at the end. Everything else I thought was kind of perfect in this episode.
All right, Chad.
I'm going to give it an 8 because they had 2 Harrenhal scenes, so it gets Doc 2 points. There we go. I'm going to just ride this Harrenhal hate all the way
that
through.
Guy, huh?
Yeah, I'm going to be that dude.
As for me, it's a 9. It's a 9. All right, so let's do this. Share my screen. Jeff, what's happening?
Oh, okay. Well, you know what? This Wednesday, at 9:35 p.m. Eastern, 6:35 p.m. Pacific, we're doing the Acolyte episode 8, and then on Friday, same time, we're doing the Lord of the Rings 2 Towers, and we'll be playing drinking games, and we're gonna have a lot of people on the panel. So yeah, just did Deep Rising. I had to moderate. It wasn't my movie, so I had to step in last minute to moderate the show. It was kind of like a shitty, like not the best show I've ever had, but I did all right. Yeah, Cyber's internet went out, and you see, obviously our episode reviews. And everything that we've been covering, which has been the Acolyte and all of our movie reviews, and that's pretty much it. We're hopefully Dom's going to come on with us and do the Penguin with us here pretty soon in August. So that's going to be interesting. And we've got some really good shit coming. We've got Daryl Dixon season 2. We've got Batman Cape Crusader. Right after we finish the House of the Dragon, we're going to start doing that. And later on this year, we've got the Dune Dune Prophecy or whatever
prequel
series or whatever. We're doing that. Skeleton Crew, Star Wars is coming out at the end of the year. We're covering that, and we got Agatha's coming out soon, so we're gonna be covering that. So we've got a lot of good shit coming up.
All right, cool. What's happening with Talking TV podcast?
Talking TV, yes, as you can see, we just uploaded our Twisters review this morning. Big episode next week, Deadpool, Wolverine, and covering at the future of the MCU that will be revealed at New York Comic Con. As you can see, we also just put up our most recent episode, our recap of last night's episode of House of the Dragon. You can see here our summer 2024 series, our House of the Dragon season 2 recap. We just finished our The Boys season 4 recap, so be sure to go and check that out at Talking TV on YouTube.
Thank you very much, sir. All right. So let's do this. All right. So thank you all so very much for joining us. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe and share. Until next time, have a good one.
Peace.